What's up, everybody? I am back, and I am Ryan Thomas, the host of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in to today's show. Been a long time coming. Obviously, I'm happy, very happy to be back on the Thomas Take week since I did my last episode of the Thomas Take. Usually, I like to put these together a little bit quicker. I normally do probably 2 to 3 a week, and it's just been such a busy stretch for me the last couple weeks with a lot of stuff I got going on with the Rochester Sports Network. Also traveling to Toronto on Wednesday to tune in live and see Mayweather versus McGregor speak some verbal onslaught on one another in the sister country of the United States of America, Canada, Toronto, Canada, at the Budweiser stage. Very excited for that event. I was in complete and total shock when I was able to get tickets for it. Tickets went very fast. Within 10 minutes, they were gone. Within 5 minutes, they were gone for the July 11th press conference tomorrow at the Staples Center. So I'm very excited. Starting off tomorrow, as I said, July 11th, Staples Center, Los Angeles. The press conference will take place. And really, this is where, as I said on previous episodes of the Thomas Take, that this is where the real fight begins for Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor in the press conference. The verbal onslaught that Conor McGregor will try to dictate the pace of the verbal onslaught versus Floyd Mayweather in this instance. And I'm really excited to see how that pans out. Because to date, obviously, Conor has been a complete, undefeated fighter as in terms of his, press conference capability, what he can do in the art of trash talk. I'm very excited to see how that pans out, for the entire world tour. Wanted to talk about, to start part one of today's show, wanted to talk about UFC 213, an event that went down this past Saturday, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Wanted to recap that event and give my post-fight reaction to UFC 213. Obviously, I got to start off with the fact that the main event received a change in less than 24 hours' notice as UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion Amanda Nunes pulled out of her fight with Valentina Shevchenko, a highly anticipated rematch dating back to UFC 189, in which Nunes and Shevchenko duked it out to a very, very close fight. A 3-round back-and-forth battle between Nunes and Shevchenko ensued, and that led to now Nunes being the champion. And on that night, it was the fateful night that Holly Holm lost her title to Miesha Tate, and also Nate Diaz upset victory over Conor McGregor. Very interesting, how the UFC bantamweight division, the women's bantamweight division, has taken so many twists and turns since Ronda Rousey's loss to Holly Holm back in Australia. Very, very interesting. Back in November of 2015. Since then, the UFC women's bantamweight division has undergone many changes as it went from Rousey to Holm to Tate to Nunes, and now heading into this fight in which it was her second title defense since defeating Miesha Tate at UFC 200. Amanda Nunes says that she had sinusitis and she had to pull out of the fight on less than 24 hours' notice. And I'm somebody that suffers from sinus issues, and I've had sinus problems throughout my entire life. Really, anytime I get sick personally, it is a sinus infection. So I have normally had bad sinus issues throughout my lifetime. So when I heard Amanda Nunes explain the fact that she had sinusitis and she couldn't breathe properly, who am I to say that she should have fought? But that's something that is not that big of a deal. It's really not. So, who knows how bad it was, but to say that she pulled out of it when Dana White actually said it very candidly. He said that 90% of this issue was mental, 10% of it was physical. I would agree with that assessment. I really would. Would I agree with the way Dana White kind of went about it? Not necessarily. Pretty much saying that Amanda Nunes would never headline again, but that's not actually what he said. The quote was specifically that title would never be a main event again, which that kind of wasn't really fair. And then he kind of doubled down on it. And let it be known that this is not to the fault of women's MMA. This is to the fault of one fighter, Amanda Nunes. She should have definitely fought. She made weight already. Who pulls out of a fight after they make weight? Not many fighters. Very strange, very odd, to say the least. And the card, definitely, the UFC especially, was left scrambling due to the aftermath of the Nunes pullout. So I definitely, I'm very, shocked that Nunes would do that in that little amount of time. And especially with all the trash talk that was ensuing between Shevchenko and Nunes during the UFC press conferences promoting the pay-per-view in International Fight Week in Las Vegas, Nevada, I expected Nunes to really, really prove something. I thought that she had a lot to prove heading into that fight. I still think she does. And it begs the question, was she scared of Valentina Shevchenko? And I don't know if she was, but it would certainly look that way. I wouldn't really disagree with anyone if that was their assessment of the Nunes situation. As far as Dana White and how he kind of handled the aftermath of it, I definitely find it interesting that as the president of the UFC, Dana White has continued to kind of blast his own product in terms of Amanda Nunes, in terms of Demetrius Johnson, pretty much anybody that kind of doesn't really go along with the Dana White narrative is just put on blast by Dana White, which in large part leads to the decisions of fighters like Rory McDonald and the now newly minted Bellator MMA fighter Gegard Mousasi. So really, Dana White, I'm very shocked that he kind of acted the way he did in terms of this situation. But I wouldn't blame him for being upset because of the situation, but I thought the way he handled it was a little off base. Wanted to talk about the fights, UFC 213. Obviously the Nunes pullout, I had to address that first and foremost, but the main event that was Romero versus Whitaker, what an entertaining fight that was. Those guys really went after it, especially Robert Whitaker to a unanimous decision victory, majority victory. I really love this kid. I think that he is a future star in the making. Obviously, he's a star now that he is the UFC interim middleweight champion. The run that Robert Whitaker has went on, most notably, as stated in these last two fights, with victories over Yoel Romero and Jacare Souza, two guys that no one wanted to sign on the dotted line to fight. Luke Rockhold pulled out of the fight with Jacare Souza, choosing Michael Bisping instead, and that ultimately was a bad decision on Luke Rockhold's part. But everybody was saying how scary, how devastating Yoel Romero was heading into this fight, how he's such a dynamic fighter and everything. I never really saw it. I hate to rain on Yoel Romero's parade, but I always saw Yoel Romero as a fighter that gassed beyond the second round. That was really a two-round fighter, even though he was able to get some key finishes in the third round versus some of his opponents throughout his UFC career, Chris Weidman, Tim Kennedy. I really thought that Yoel Romero never had the gas tank to go the championship rounds. And for Robert Whitaker to have the injury that he had to his knee, to his leg, early on in the fight, to fight the way he did was the mark of a true champion, a true warrior, and I really think that there's no need to really make this kid a WWE mouthpiece. This is one of the few remaining last of the Mohicans type fighters that can promote himself by the way he fights. He doesn't have to go out and get people's attention. He is his own athletic specimen, and I really admire the way he fights in the octagon. I really admire the way he handles himself outside the octagon. A man of true class indeed. He showed respect to Michael Bisping as the champion. He didn't blast him or do anything like that. He was very respectful. A true martial artist, and I really, really admired that. I thought that was awesome to see him react the way he did to the victory. He was very happy, and then the banter from Whitaker to Bisping was really awesome. So I'm very excited for Whitaker versus Bisping, or Bisping versus Whitaker. I really wanted to see Bisping versus St. Pierre, but apparently, according to to the UFC president Dana White. That fight, the ship has sailed on that fight, and GSP will fight the winner of Woodley versus Maia at some point later in the year, most likely in November at Madison Square Garden. Co-main event, Alistair Overeem versus Fabricio Verdum, a trilogy match, a trilogy fight that I was really excited for, and really it turned out to be kind of a dud until the third round, where Verdum was really able to land solid, clean punches on Overeem. But the gaffe of the night that I thought immediately while watching it was the fact that Fabricio Verdum was punching Alistair Overeem at will, landing shots repeatedly over and over again. Overeem was out on his feet, looked like he couldn't even put his hands up to protect himself, and Verdum takes him down. What was that? Verdum has power in his hands. He's a very good boxer. He's come a long way in terms of his MMA striking, especially to rock a guy like Alistair Overeem. I really was just perplexed that he decided to take the fight to the ground in that moment. Realistically, I think he could have finished Overeem had he not decided to take him down, because after that, it was pretty much Verdum laying on top of Overeem to a decision loss, because Overeem had that fight 2 rounds out of 3. So very odd indeed that the fight went the way it did. In the main event, you got Yoel Romero proving his worth, that he couldn't go past really the third round. The fight was a unanimous decision, but you go to the punch stats, Romero barely threw any punches in the 4th and 5th round. Especially the 3rd round was where I actually really thought that, this fight was going to end. There were moments where Whitaker was really landing solid punches and doing what he needed to do to win the fight. But the future is bright for the UFC middleweight division with Robert Whitaker possibly taking the mantle, but it definitely took a huge hit today as Gegard Mousasi signed a 6-fight deal with Bellator MMA, the number 2 promotion in the world of mixed martial arts. My thoughts on that and much, much more inside the world of Bellator. Tune into the Thomas Take Sports podcast. I will be right back.